The plate shattered on the restaurant floor, sauce splattering across my shoes like blood from an old wound. "You should have never come," my daughter-in-law hissed, loud enough for the entire room to hear. My son didn't say a word, not even when I looked at him, silently begging for something, anything. On Monday, she received a letter from my lawyer. What they never knew, what I'd buried for years, was about to rewrite everything they thought they controlled. You here follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has. At the restaurant, she hurled my plate to the ground like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Harlo's words still echo in my ears. "You should have never come." All eyes turned to me, the room frozen, breath held. And Carlton, my son, my only child, sat in silence, not even daring to meet my gaze. That moment will stay with me forever. The sharp crash of porcelain shattering, sauce splattering onto my dress, red like the shame burning in my chest. 60 years old, and I'd never felt so invisible, so unwanted. The silence in Bellini's was louder than any scream. My birthday, the first time Carlton had reached out in months. I'd let myself hope. Foolishly, it turns out. I spent hours getting ready, wore my best dress, even slipped on the pearl necklace Robert gave me before he died. I wanted to look beautiful for my boy. I wanted to feel like I still mattered. I brought a small photo album, pictures of Carlton as a baby, learning to ride a bike, graduating college. I thought we might flip through them together over dessert, laugh about the past, maybe mend something. But the moment I sat down, the air felt wrong. Harlo barely glanced at me, her fingers flying across her phone screen. Carlton kept checking his watch, as if somewhere, anywhere, else was better than here with me. Still I tried. God knows I tried. I asked about the children, desperate for any crumb of connection. I hadn't seen my grandchildren in nearly 8 months. "They're fine," Harlo said sharply, eyes glued to her phone. I pushed forward, forcing a smile through the ache. "I brought a little gift for Emma's birthday next week. I hope she'll like it." That's when Harlo finally looked up, her eyes cold and empty. "We already told you, Bessie. Emma has too many toys. She doesn't need your cheap trinkets." Carlton shifted uncomfortably. "Harlo, please." "No, Carlton," she snapped. "I'm tired of her trying to buy our children's affection when she was such a terrible mother to you." The slap wasn't physical, but it may as well have been. My mouth opened. I don't understand." "You never do you, Harlo hissed, her voice rising, always playing the victim. Poor Bessie, all alone in that big house. Maybe if you hadn't been so controlling, Carlton wouldn't have needed therapy." Therapy? That was the first I'd heard of it. My eyes shot to Carlton, my heart pounding. "Carlton?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "It's nothing, Mom." "It's not nothing, Shoto," Harlo barked. "Tell her how she ruined your childhood. Tell her how she never let you be your own person." The waiter arrived, awkward and flustered, setting plates in front of us while Harlo continued her vicious monologue. I sat frozen. My world, everything I thought I knew, was crumbling. I reached for Carlton's hand. "Honey, I don't know what—" Then Harlo stood. With a twisted face, she snatched my plate and flung it to the floor. "You witch. You should never have come." Silence fell over the room like a shroud. I could feel every eye on me, strangers watching as the remnants of my dignity were wiped away with marinara sauce and shattered china. "Carlton," I whispered, choking on the lump in my throat. "Carlton, please." But my son, the boy I'd raised alone since his father died when he was 12, the boy I'd worked 3 jobs for so he could go to college, just sat there, his face pale, his shoulders hunched, his silence louder than anything Harlo had said. I grabbed my purse, my hands trembling, my legs nearly giving out beneath me. "I'm sorry to have ruined your evening," I said, my voice surprisingly even. Dignity was all I had left, and I held it like armor as I walked away with tears slipping down my cheeks. In the parking lot, I broke. I sobbed in my car until I could barely breathe. Through the window, I saw them, still eating, still talking, as if I had never been there. I drove home to the house Robert and I bought 40 years ago, the house where Carlton learned to walk, where he had his first kiss on the porch, where he told me he was going to propose to Harlo. That house now felt enormous, echoing, Empty, haunted. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Robert's armchair, surrounded by old photo albums, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Was I controlling? Had I ruined Carlton's childhood? The questions haunted me until morning. But when dawn came, so did something else. Clarity. The tears had dried. The confusion was gone. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. James, it's Bessie Hartman. I need your help. On Monday, Harlo received a letter from my lawyer. Her bank accounts were frozen. What she and Carlton didn't know, oh, what I had kept hidden for years, believing it was best to respect their independence, was about to change everything. 3 days after that dinner, I sat across from James Wilson, my lawyer and old friend. We'd known each other for over 40 years, since the days when Robert and I were just starting Hartman Construction. James flipped through the documents I'd brought to him. You sure about this, Bessie? He asked gently, peering over his glasses. I've never been more certain, I answered. My voice no longer trembled. James nodded slowly. It's going to cause quite a stir. I'm counting on it. They thought I was just Carlton's aging mother, a lonely woman on a modest pension, living in a house too big for her. That story had served me well. It kept things simple. But the truth was very different. After Robert died, everyone assumed I'd sell the company. But I didn't. I took the reins myself, quietly expanding Hartman Construction into one of the most successful firms in the state. I kept my lifestyle modest by choice, not necessity. I stayed in the big house for the memories, not the status. And the home where Carlton and Harlo lived? The beautiful colonial they thought he'd bought through his successful career in investment banking? That house was mine, bought by me, 7 years ago when Carlton had mentioned wanting to live in that neighborhood but couldn't afford it yet. Let me help, I'd offered. No, Mom, he'd said, but I helped anyway, quietly, because that's what mothers do, or at least what I had always done, until now. We don't need your money. He'd said it with such finality, so I bought the house through my company and arranged a private sale that allowed them to purchase it at just half its market value. Carlton was thrilled, convinced he'd scored a fantastic deal from a seller eager to close. But the truth was, I still held the deed, and every mortgage payment they sent didn't go to a bank. It went into a trust I'd created for my grandchildren's future education. It was legal, quietly deceptive, perhaps, but within bounds. I had told myself this was what any loving mother would do, offer help without bruising anyone's pride. Yet now I wasn't so sure. Had I really been helping? Or had I just enabled the emotional distance between us, letting them believe they were independent while secretly keeping them afloat? The letter should be arriving today, James said, cutting into my thoughts. Are you ready for the fallout? The letter he'd drafted revealed to Harlo that the credit card she'd been using, believing it was funded by a special account Carlton had set up, was actually being quietly supplemented by me. Month after month, as she maxed it out on designer clothes and spa appointments, it was my money filling in the gaps. Carlton didn't know. He believed his paycheck funded their lifestyle, but it didn't. I'm ready, I said, though my chest tightened at what was to come. It was time for honesty. Leaving James's office, I drove to the small cafe I frequented when I needed to think. As I sipped my tea, my phone rang. Carlton's name lit up the screen. I answered, keeping my tone neutral. Hello, Carlton. Mom, what the hell is going on? His voice was tight with restrained fury. Harlo just got some letter from a lawyer saying her credit card has been frozen and that I've apparently been supplementing it for the last 5 years. I finished the sentence for him. Yes, that's right. Silence, then. What are you talking about? Carlton, we need to talk about money, about the truth, about your house. My house? What about my house? I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. The house is in my name, Carlton. It always has been. Another silence, this one heavier. I could almost hear the wheels turning as he tried to reconcile this with everything he thought he knew about his life. That's not possible, he finally said. I have the mortgage. I make the payments. Yes, you do, but you've been paying into a trust I set up. I own the house, Carlton. I've been helping you for years, but after what happened at the restaurant, I decided it was time to stop hiding the truth. This is insane, he said, his voice rising. You're making this up because Harlo upset you. This is exactly the kind of controlling behavior she's always talked about. His words hit hard, but I stayed calm. I'll be home all afternoon. Come by when you're ready to talk. Bring Harlo if you'd like. I'll have all the documents ready. I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a quiet resolve. For too long, I'd let myself be sidelined in my son's life, watching as Harlo turned him further from me. I had tried to keep a place in their lives by giving quietly, never asking for gratitude or even acknowledgement. But not anymore. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Carlton on the porch, alone. His expression was a mix of disbelief and simmering anger. Prove it, he demanded, brushing past me into the house. I led him to the dining room, where I'd laid out everything. The deed to the house, bank records showing my monthly payments to cover Harlo's spending, tax documents proving I still owned Hartman Construction. I don't understand, he murmured, flipping through the papers. Why would you keep this from me, from us? I sat across from him, feeling the weight of all 60 years pressing down on me. Because you made it clear you didn't want my help, I said quietly. But you needed it, and I wanted to be a part of your life, even if you didn't know I was there. He looked up at me, and for a second, I saw the little boy I used to know, the one who came to me with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to make things right. Does Harlo know? He asked. No, the letter is the first she's heard of it. He ran a hand through his hair, so much like his father it made my heart ache. She's furious, thinks you're punishing her for what happened at the IEG restaurant. And what do you think? Carlton looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time in years. I think I don't know who my mother is anymore. The next morning I was in the kitchen making tea when a car door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. I didn't even flinch. I already knew who it was. Mom! Carlton's voice thundered through the house as he barreled through the front door. We need to talk. Now. I took my time stirring honey into my tea, preparing myself for the confrontation. When I walked into the living room, he wasn't alone. Harlo was beside him, cheeks flushed with rage, a designer handbag clutched like a shield. Good morning, I said evenly. Would either of you like some tea? Cut the crap, Harlo snapped. They did. What kind of sick game are you playing? I lowered myself into Robert's old armchair, keeping my gaze steady. No game, Harlo, just the truth. Carlton was pacing now, agitated and angry. After yesterday's conversation, I had hoped for humility. What I saw instead was defiance. You can't just freeze Harlo's card like that, he said. Do you know how humiliating it was for her when it got declined at Nordstrom? In front of everyone? I almost laughed. Is that really what matters most to you right now? Embarrassment at a department store? You're trying to control us, Harlo jumped in. Just like you've always tried to control Carlton. He told me all about his childhood, how you suffocated him after his dad died. I set my teacup down. The clink against the saucer sounded strangely loud in the tense room. Is that how you see it, Carlton? That I suffocated you? He stopped pacing, his fists clenched at his sides. You never let me make my own choices. I wanted to play football, go to summer camp, pick my own college, but you always had to interfere. I interfered because I was your mother, I said gently, a single mother who was doing her best to raise you while keeping the business afloat after your father died. I wasn't perfect, Carlton, not even close, but everything I did because I loved you. Love? Harlo scoffed. If you loved him, you wouldn't manipulate him like this. I turned to her, my voice calm but firm. Manipulate him how? By covering your bills? By giving you a house you couldn't afford on your own? We don't need your money, Carlton spat. I make more than enough, Carlton insisted. No, you don't, I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended, even surprising myself. Carlton, yes, your salary is generous, but not nearly enough for the way you and Harlo live. That house alone would swallow almost 70% of your net income if you were actually paying market value. I leaned over and picked up a folder from the side table, handing it to him. These are your financial statements from the past 5 years. Withdrawals, credit card bills. the investments that never seemed to mature or yield anything. He hesitated before taking it, his fingers trembling slightly as he opened the folder. "This is a violation of privacy," Harlo spat, clearly trying to sound offended. But I saw it, the flicker of fear behind her outrage. It was faint, but unmistakable. "Maybe it is," I acknowledged, "but sometimes the truth has to be intrusive. Otherwise, no one ever hears it." Carlton began flipping through the pages, the color slowly draining from his face as his emotions shifted. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally something like dread. "This can't be right," he murmured. "We don't spend this much on what even is luxury boutique services." Harlo lunged forward, reaching to close the folder. "It's nothing. Your mother is clearly fabricating things, trying to wedge herself between us again." "Am I?" I asked gently, my voice calm. I met Carlton's eyes. "I've known for a long time, son. Harlo's been manipulating you. I didn't say anything before because I was afraid. Afraid that if I confronted it directly, I'd lose you completely. Every time I tried to get close, she'd twist it. She'd tell you stories about what I supposedly said or did to push you further away." "That's not true." Harlo's voice was nearly a shriek. "Do you remember when you thought I refused to go to Emma's christening?" I asked, still calm. "I was never even invited. Or that Thanksgiving, when you were sure I insulted your parenting? I wasn't even there." Carlton's gaze darted between us, uncertainty clouding his features. "Mom, Harlo wouldn't." "She would," I said steadily. "And she did. I let it happen because I was terrified that standing up to her would cost me any chance of being part of your life, or my grandchildren's. So I helped from the sidelines. I bought the house. I supplemented your income. I quietly held things together while Harlo slowly, methodically erased me from your world." Harlo clutched his arm. "She's lying. She's always resented me. Us. She's never accepted that you chose me over her." A dry, hollow laugh escaped me. "Oh, Harlo, this was never a competition. Or at least it never should have been." Carlton gently shook her off, the motion deliberate. There was a heaviness in his eyes as he turned to face her. "What is luxury boutique services?" he repeated, his tone firmer. A flush rose in Harlo's cheeks, dark and splotchy. "Just spa stuff," she mumbled. "You know I need to look good." I didn't say anything. I knew this was their moment. The truth didn't need more words from me. Carlton turned to a specific page, tracing a column of numbers with his finger. $15,000 on spa treatments in 1 month. His disbelief was stark. "There's a high-end retreat in Arizona," I added quietly. "They're famous for their privacy and their plastic surgery." All the color drained from Harlo's face. "You spied on me?" "No," I replied. "I manage all transactions related to my accounts. The credit card you've been using is tied to me. You remember that, right?" I just read the statements. Carlton flipped to another page, his hands moving faster now, more erratically. "What about these withdrawals? 10,000 here, 15 there." "I don't know what those are for," I admitted. "Maybe Harlo can explain." The room felt heavy, the silence between us charged with tension. Carlton turned toward Harlo, eyes filled with confusion and searching for answers. For a brief second, she looked cornered, trapped with no way out. Then her expression hardened. "This is absurd," she snapped. "I'm not going to sit here and be interrogated by a bitter old woman who refuses to accept that her son grew up and moved on." She stormed toward the door, purse clutched tight under her arm. At the threshold, she stopped, looked back. "Well?" she demanded. "Are you coming?" Carlton stood frozen, the folder still open in his hands, torn between everything he had believed and what was now unraveling. "She's manipulating you, Carlton," Harlo said with venom, "just like she's always done. She's using money to control you. Don't let her break us apart." I remained seated. My heart thudded in my chest, painfully loud. This was the tipping point, the moment everything either fell apart or began to rebuild. Would he see the truth now? Or would he once again choose the carefully constructed version of reality Harlo had wrapped him in? Carlton looked at me, and for the first time in so many years, I knew he truly saw me. Not the overbearing mother Harlo painted me to be, but the woman who had quietly sacrificed everything for her son's happiness. "Mom," he said hesitantly. It's your choice, Carlton, I whispered. It always has been. Harlo's face contorted in rage. If you stay here with her, she hissed, don't bother coming home. Her words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Carlton looked down at the folder, then at his wife, and back to me. I need time to think, he said finally, voice barely audible. Harlo scoffed bitterly. Unbelievable. She's done it again. She turned on her heel and slammed the door behind her, the echo rattling through the walls. Carlton and I sat in silence, surrounded by decades of silence and misunderstanding. I never wanted it to come to this, I said quietly. Then why did you? He asked, slumping down onto the couch. He looked exhausted, hollowed out. Because sometimes, I answered, loving someone means telling them the truth, even when it hurts. Carlton didn't stay long after that. He needed space, he said. Time to absorb everything, to make sense of what had just been torn open. I understood. His world had just crumbled beneath his feet. The following days felt like a strange limbo. I went through the motions, working, answering emails, getting lost in spreadsheets, anything to avoid sitting alone with my thoughts. I waited for something, anything. Would Carlton return? Would Harlo somehow spin the story and pull him back? By Thursday afternoon, the waiting had worn me thin. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Martha Pierce, my oldest, dearest friend. We'd been inseparable since high school, long before Robert, before Carlton, before the complicated years etched their stories into our lives. I brought wine, she announced, raising a bottle of Merlot like it was a lifeline. You look like you need it. I managed a tired smile. Martha never did tiptoe around the truth. That obvious? She followed me into the kitchen, watching as I fetched 2 glasses. Bessie, you've let every call go to voicemail for 3 days. Your front yard looks like it's been abandoned. And she eyed me closely. You're wearing the same cardigan I saw you in on Monday. I glanced down. She was right. So, she said, pouring the wine generously, are you going to tell me what's going on, or do I need to drag it out of you? I sighed, took a long sip, and finally let the story tumble out. All of it. Martha listened intently as I laid everything bare. The house, the finances, the confrontation with Carlton and Harlo. Her face grew more troubled with each passing detail, until I finally stopped. Oh, Bessie, she said softly. I knew things with Carlton were strained, but I had no idea it had gotten this bad. Neither did I admitted. I was so focused on staying connected to them, on not losing my place in their lives, that I missed how toxic things had become. Martha swirled her wine thoughtfully before taking a slow sip. Then, after a pause that made my stomach knot, she said, there's something you should know, something I probably should have told you years ago. I leaned forward, tense. What is it? She set her glass down and carefully chose her words. About 3 years ago, I saw Harlo at the Lakeside Hotel. She wasn't with Carlton. She was with a Maggie seemed very close to. My breath caught. You mean they looked intimate? She nodded. I didn't say anything at the time because I wasn't absolutely certain. I didn't want to stir up trouble if there was some innocent explanation. 3 years ago, I repeated slowly. That's around the time Carlton told me they were seeing a marriage counselor. Martha gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. Unless that counselor was a tall man with a goatee who liked kissing her in hotel lobbies, I doubt that's what was happening. I felt sick, not just from the realization that Harlo had cheated on my son, but from the deeper, more humiliating truth that I may have been funding her betrayal, the unexplained withdrawals, the spa retreats, the self-care expenses. Had I unknowingly been paying for her to cheat? There's more, Martha said reluctantly. At Maggie Wilson's retirement party last year, Harlo had too much to drink. I overheard her bragging to a group of women. She said she had it made, a husband who never questioned her spending, and a mother-in-law who financed her lifestyle without even knowing it. I stared at her, horrified. She knew, I whispered. All this time, she knew I was covering their expenses. Martha nodded grimly. She figured it out years ago. And the worst part, she thought it was hilarious. Her words, not mine. She laughed about how hard you tried to keep it a secret. The room tilted slightly. My heart pounded with a mix of grief and fury. I had truly believed I was helping Carlton, protecting his dignity while giving his family the life they wanted. Instead, I had been blind, manipulated, just like him. I have to tell Carlton, I said, already reaching for my phone. But Martha laid her hand gently over mine. Are you sure that's wise? He's going through so much right now. I hesitated, torn. He deserves to know the truth. All of it. Yes, she said, but timing matters, Bessie. His whole world is already in pieces. Maybe wait, let him breathe a little before adding to it. She was right, I knew she was. But before I could say so, my phone rang. Carlton's name lit up the screen. It's him, I said, hard hammering. I picked up. Carlton, is everything all right? His voice was tight, too calm. I need to see you. Can I come over? Of course, I'm home now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up without saying goodbye. Martha stood and picked up her purse. I should go. Sounds like this is a conversation you two need to have in private. I walked her to the door, trying to steady myself. Thank you for the wine and for telling me the truth. She squeezed my hand. Call me later. And Bessie, be gentle with him. Realizing the life you had wasn't real, it's a brutal thing to face, right? 20 minutes later, right on time, Carlton arrived. His face was pale, drawn, like he hadn't slept in days. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Something stronger? He shook his head. Nothing. He walked straight to the living room, restless, pacing before he finally turned to me. His face was hard to read. I found something, he said, his voice strangely flat. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. Inside were bank statements, not the ones I'd seen before, but new ones. Different account numbers, transactions to places I didn't recognize. Then one name jumped out. Bahamas Private Banking, Lented. What is this? I asked, though I already had a sick feeling I knew. Harlo's secret account, Carlton said, his voice cracking. She's been moving money, our money, into it for years, over $300,000. I sank onto the couch, the papers clutched in my hand. Oh, Carlton, I'm so sorry. He laughed bitterly, no humor in the sound. You're sorry. I should be the one apologizing. You tried to warn me, and I didn't want to hear it. I believed her lies because it was easier than facing the truth. The truth that I married someone who never really loved me. Someone who used me. Used us. I wanted to tell him it couldn't be true. That maybe there was more to it, but I couldn't bring myself to lie. Not now. There's more, he said, sitting down across from me. I hired a private investigator. My eyes widened. Carlton, was that really necessary? Yes, he said firmly. I needed to know how deep it went. And Mom, it's worse than I thought. He told me the investigator had found more than just the one affair. There were multiple men, spread over years. Harlo had been systematically siphoning money, building a safety net while planning her escape. She was going to leave, Carlton said hollowly. He found emails. She and this man, who she's still seeing, they were planning to take the kids and move to the Bahamas as soon as she had enough saved. I reached for his hand, and to my surprise, he let me take it. And the children? I asked softly. They're confused. Harlo told them I was away on business. I don't know how to explain this to them. That their mother lied to all of us. We sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing in on us. Then Carlton spoke again, his voice a little stronger. I've been such a fool, Mom, not just about Harlo. He squeezed my hand gently. I let her turn me against you. She made me believe you were the problem, that you were overbearing, controlling. But it was her. It was always her. We were both deceived, I said gently. No, he said, shaking his head. I should have seen it. The way she kept me from you, from my friends, the constant excuses, the missing money, the late nights, her complaints about you. I wanted so badly to believe we had this perfect life. I ignored everything that didn't fit that picture. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, but I knew what he needed most right now wasn't comfort. It was clarity. The truth was unraveling, and for the first time in years, he could finally see it. Carlton didn't want to talk through the emotions. He needed to take action. So instead of pushing, I asked gently, "What are you going to do now?" He straightened his back, and a quiet determination settled across his face, so much like Robert's used to that it made my heart twist. "I've frozen all our accounts. I've contacted a lawyer, not just for the divorce, but to press charges for theft." Then he hesitated, eyes searching mine. "And Mom, I need to ask you a big favor." "Anything," I told him, and I meant it with all my heart. "Can the kids and I stay here? Just for a while, until I figure out our next steps." For the first time in what felt like years, I felt something flutter inside me. A flicker of hope. "Of course you can. This is your home too. It always has been." That evening, after Carlton left to pack a few things for himself and the kids, I stood alone in my kitchen, staring out at the backyard where he used to run barefoot through the grass. So much had changed. So much hurt had been carved into the spaces we once filled with laughter. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from all the broken pieces. Something real. My phone buzzed, a text from Martha. "Everything okay?" I stared at it for a while before typing back, "No, but I think someday it might be." 2 weeks later, the silence in my house had been replaced by bursts of energy and chaos, the kind that fills a place with life. Emma, just 7, and Jacob, 5, had turned every corner of the house into a playground of noise, movement, and joy. "Grandma, watch this," Jacob shouted, his voice high with excitement, just before launching into a wobbly somersault in the living room. "Very impressive," I clapped, heart skipping a beat as he narrowly missed the coffee table. "Maybe we try that outside next time, huh?" Carlton appeared in the doorway, looking more rested than I'd seen him in a long while. "Jacob, what did we say about acrobatics in the house?" Jacob let out an exaggerated sigh. "That we saved them for the backyard." "Exactly," Carlton replied with a small smile. "Why don't you and Emma go see if the sprinkler's still running? It's hot enough." The two of them bolted from the room before he could finish the sentence, shrieking with delight as they rushed outside. Carlton dropped onto the couch beside me, exhaling deeply. "I don't know how you did it, raising me on your own all those years." I smiled and patted his hand. "One day at a time. Sometimes 1 minute at a time." He nodded slowly, gaze drifting to the window where his children dashed through the spray of water, laughter echoing through the open glass. "The divorce papers are filed," he said after a moment. "Harlo's lawyer reached out yesterday." "What does she want?" "Everything," he said with a humorless chuckle. "The house, full custody, alimony. She's claiming I turned you against her and that you're using your wealth to punish her." I shook my head, not surprised. "And your lawyer?" "He says she doesn't have a case. The financial records clearly show she was stealing from us. And—" he paused, swallowing hard. "The private investigator found more. More affairs, multiple, over years." I squeezed his hand, offering quiet support. Some pain was too fresh for words. "I just keep thinking about all the signs I missed," he said, his voice low. "All the times I stood by her, defended her to you. I really believe she was right and you were just trying to control everything. I was blind." "We see what we want to see," I said softly, "especially when it's someone we love." He looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time in years. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, "for all of it. For believing her lies, for shutting you out, for how she treated you that night at the restaurant. You don't need to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted firmly. "I was wrong, and I let her drive a wedge between us for far too long." Tears stung my eyes. "We're here now. That's what matters." Outside, Emma let out a delighted shriek as Jacob turned the sprinkler on her. Carlton chuckled, and it reached his eyes this time. "They've missed you," he said. "Even when Harlo limited their visits, they always talked about Grandma Bessie, your cookies, your stories." My heart swelled. "They're remarkable kids." "They are," he agreed. "They deserve better than what they've had. A mother more interested in social events than their happiness. And a father who was too focused on keeping up appearances to notice what was happening right in front of him." "You're being too hard on yourself," I said firm. "You're a good father, Carlton. Look at how you've handled everything, protecting them, keeping some kind of normalcy through all of this." He shrugged, visibly uncomfortable. I'm trying, but it's a lot. One day at a time, I reminded him. The next morning, after he dropped the kids at summer day camp, I made a decision. I was done hiding. It was time to step forward, to reclaim my life. I started by calling James. I want to go public, I told him, about my role at Hartman Construction. No more hiding behind Robert's legacy or the men on the board. People need to know who's been running this company all these years. He didn't even hesitate. About time, if you ask me. The board will support you. They already know the truth. You're the reason this company thrived. Next, I called Martha. I'm throwing a dinner party on Saturday, I told her. Nothing fancy, just a few close friends. It's been too long. Bessie Hartman, the hostess returns, she teased. What brought this on? Life's too short to wait around for permission to live, I said. Will you come? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. By Saturday, my dining room was alive again, set for 8. Martha and her husband, my old friend David, newly widowed, James and his wife Carlton, and me. The kids were on a supervised play date, giving Carlton a well-earned evening of adult company. It felt strange at first, hosting again after years of silence and grief. But as the wine flowed and conversation bloomed, something inside me began to thaw. To new beginnings, James toasted, lifting his glass. And old friends, I added, my eyes scanning the room full of people who had always seen the real me. Later, over coffee in the living room, David sat beside me. It's good to see you like this, Bessie, he said warmly. You remind me of those wonderful dinner parties you and Robert used to host. You always had a way of bringing people together. I smiled, deeply moved. It's been too long. Life has a way of getting in the way, he agreed softly. After Margaret passed, I couldn't bear the thought of socializing again. For the longest time, the idea of laughter or small talk felt like a betrayal to her memory. But eventually I came to see what she would have wanted. She wouldn't have asked me to stop living just because she was gone. That's exactly it, I said softly, my voice barely audible over the hum of the gathering around us. I've been existing, not living. I was holding on so tightly to Carlton, trying to keep some piece of her alive, that I lost sight of everything else that makes life worth living. David nodded, his eyes full of quiet understanding. Well, if you're looking to make up for lost time, he said gently, there's a symphony performance next weekend. I happen to have an extra ticket. Something stirred inside me then, something fragile and unfamiliar. It had been years since I'd felt anything like it, a flutter of anticipation, the whisper of possibility. I'd like that, I said. Across the room, I noticed Carlton watching us. A small, knowing smile played on his lips. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and he gave me a subtle, reassuring nod, as if to say, it's okay, Mom, you can let go. Later that night, after the guests had trickled out and the house had returned to its familiar quiet, Carlton found me into the kitchen, standing at the sink, rinsing the last few dishes. I can't remember the last time I saw you laugh like that, he said, grabbing a dish towel and stepping in beside me to help dry. It's been a while, I admitted, handing him a plate. I'm glad, he said sincerely. You deserve to be happy. He hesitated for a second, then added with a bit of a grin, David seems nice. I could feel my cheeks flush at his teasing tone. He's just an old friend. Carlton hummed in that suspicious, amused way only a son could. An old friend who couldn't take his eyes off you all night. I swatted at him with the dish towel. Stop that. We're both too old for that kind of thing. His smile faded slightly, replaced with a quiet seriousness. You're never too old for a connection. He paused. That's one thing this whole mess with Harlo's taught me. Life's too short to spend it with people who don't value you. I met his eyes and nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. When did you get so wise? I asked, leaning my shoulder against his. I had a good teacher, he said with a soft bump to my arm, even if I was too stubborn to listen for a while. That night, as I crawled into bed, I felt different, lighter somehow, like I had finally laid down a heavy load I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for years. The constant anxiety over Carlton, the fear that I might lose him entirely, the delicate tightrope of trying to help without interfering, it had taken over so much of me. But now, for the first time in what felt like forever, I was thinking about my own life again, my own happiness, not just as Carlton's mother or Robert's widow or the silent architect behind Hartman Construction, but as Bessie, a woman with hopes, with a future still unfolding before her. The next morning, I woke early with a clear head and a quiet sense of resolve. I drove out to the little lake just beyond the edge of town, the one Robert and I used to visit when we were newly married and didn't have much but each other. I sat down on the worn wooden bench that overlooked the still water, letting the early light wrap itself around me. The sunrise painted the sky in soft strokes of pink and gold. I think I'm finally ready to move forward, I whispered into the breeze, imagining Robert somewhere in it, present in the rustle of the leaves and the warmth that touched my cheek, to build something new. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Carlton. Kids want to know if Grandma's making pancakes this morning. I smiled to myself, fingers tapping back. On my way home now, tell them to get the blueberries ready. Home. Yes, that's what it was again. A real home. One filled with laughter, love, and possibilities I hadn't dared dream of just a few weeks ago. 6 months. That's all it had taken to change everything. As autumn surrendered to winter, our lives continued to shift and stretch in ways none of us could have predicted. Each day brought its own set of challenges, and yet unexpected joys seemed to find us too. The divorce dragged on, of course. Harlo refused to go quietly, fighting every inch of the way. Her initial demands, outrageous and self-serving, eventually gave way to more desperate tactics as her position grew weaker. When the evidence of her affairs and financial misconduct became irrefutable, she switched tactics entirely. She started painting herself as a victim of a cold, controlling husband and a manipulative mother-in-law. She's claiming emotional abuse now, Carlton told me one evening after the kids were in bed. She says I isolated her and micromanaged her spending. I shook my head, stunned at her audacity. Does she really believe anyone's going to buy that? Her lawyer advised against it, Carlton said, massaging his temples. But Harlo's never been good at listening to advice. She still thinks she can win. Despite the storm of legal wrangling, life in our house found a rhythm, a peaceful, grounded rhythm. Carlton had taken a leave of absence from work to focus on the kids and on himself. He consulted part-time from home, carving out space to be fully present. I, on the other hand, had finally stepped into the role I'd hidden behind for years, the real CEO of Hartman Construction. No more proxies, no more figureheads. The public announcement sent ripples through the business world. One headline practically shouted, "Widow revealed as secret CEO. How Bessie Hartman built an empire from the shadows." "Your famous grandma," Emma said proudly, holding up a copy of the newspaper one of her classmates had brought to school. "My teacher says you're an inspiration." The house I had once thought too big, too empty, was now brimming with life. Toys scattered across the living room. Emma's vibrant drawings covered the refrigerator. Carlton's papers and laptop occupied a corner of the dining table. And me, I was no longer on the outside looking in. I was right in the middle of it all, a part of the pulse of my family again. Then one crisp December morning, as snow lightly dusted the ground, I stood flipping pancakes when Carlton walked into the kitchen, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked. He held up an envelope. It just came, courier delivery, from Harlo's lawyer. My heart started to pound. I set the spatula down slowly. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it yet," he said, taking a deep breath and tearing it open. He scanned the pages. Slowly, his brow lifted in disbelief. "She's dropping the custody fight," he said, almost in a whisper. "She's agreed to supervise visits. Twice a month." I stared at him. Why would she give up now after all that? He handed me another sheet from the envelope. A photo, grainy, low quality. Harlo, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize, boarding a plane. "She's been living with him in Miami," Carlton said, "for the past month. She missed her last 3 court dates because she wasn't even in the state." I sat down hard at the kitchen table, trying to absorb what he'd just told me. "She abandoned her children," I said quietly. Carlton nodded, and I could see so many emotions flash across his face. Relief, betrayal, grief, maybe even a little guilt. "The lawyer says she'll sign over all parental rights." he said, in exchange for a lump sum payout and a guarantee that I won't press criminal charges for the money she stole. He paused and I waited, heart tight. Are you? Carlton sat quietly, running a hand through his hair, his face marked by indecision. Part of me wants her to face the consequences for what she did, he murmured, voice tight. But another part just wants this over, for the kid's sake. I reached across the table and gently squeezed his hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. In the end, Carlton chose peace over vengeance. 2 weeks later, the settlement was finalized. Full custody awarded to Carlton, a fair but modest payout to Harlo, far less than what she'd initially demanded in the sale of the house they had once shared. As we signed the final documents at James's office, I asked, "What will you do with the money from the house?" Without missing a beat, Carlton answered, "Put it in a trust for the kids. It's their future, not mine." James gave an approving nod. "I can help set that up." Then he turned to me. "And Bessie, now that things are settled, we should talk about your estate planning too." I nodded slowly. A decision I had been weighing for months now felt clear and necessary. Yes, there are changes I want to make. That evening, while Emma and Jacob played in the backyard, Carlton and I sat on the porch, hands wrapped around mugs of hot chocolate, the crisp winter air nipping at our faces. "I've been thinking," Carlton said, breaking the comfortable silence. "We should move out, find our own place." His words stung more than I'd expected, though I tried not to let it show. "Oh, of course, if that's what you want. This arrangement was always meant to be temporary." He looked surprised. "No, Mom, that's not what I meant." He leaned forward, his tone earnest. "I meant we should all move together. This house, it holds so many memories, but maybe it's time for a fresh start, a place where we can create new memories, all of us." I stared at him, startled. "You want us to keep living together?" He nodded, though a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "Unless you'd rather have your space back. I know we've kind of invaded your quiet life." "Invaded?" I let out a soft laugh. The word was so wrong for how I truly felt. "Carlton, having you and the kids here, well, it's been the greatest joy of my life. I just didn't want to hold you back if you needed more independence. We've had enough separation in this family," he said firmly. "Emma and Jacob love you. And honestly, I don't know what I would have done these past months without you. We're a team now." Tears welled into my eyes, not from pain but joy. I'd love that. A new home for all of us. 2 weeks later, we found it. A spacious, welcoming house with a wide yard close to the kids' school and my office. There was even a separate wing that offered me privacy while still keeping me close to the family. Carlton insisted on paying half, using his consulting income. "It's not about pride anymore," he said when I tried to protest. "It's about partnership. We're building this life together, Mom, equal partners." That same day after we signed in the paperwork for our new home, I met with James again to finalize my new will. Unlike what Harlo had assumed, where she and Carlton would split everything, leaving me with nothing, this version mirrored our present reality. My estate would be divided equally between Carlton and my grandchildren, with dedicated provisions for their education and future needs. Moving day came in early spring. As I stood in the living room of the old house, my home of 40 years, the memories came rushing in. Carlton's tiny feet stumbling across the hardwood. Robert's hearty laughter drifting from the kitchen. Christmas mornings filled with joy. Quiet evenings marked by absence after both Robert and Carlton were gone. A chapter full of love, grief, growth. "Ready, Mom?" Carlton called from the doorway. Emma and Jacob peeked in from behind him, their curious eyes filled with excitement. I took one last deep breath and smiled. Ready. Our new home embraced us with sunlight and possibility. That first weekend, we unpacked together, setting up rooms, arranging furniture, hanging up the children's drawings. It wasn't just about moving in, it was about making this place our own. David stopped by with a thoughtful housewarming gift, a delicate wind chime for the back porch. He stayed for dinner, his easy laughter and gentle presence blending effortlessly into the rhythm of our new family life. That night, after the kids were asleep and Carlton had gone to his room, I sat alone on the back porch. The wind chime swayed gently in the spring breeze, its soft song comforting me as I looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter than usual, as if celebrating the new beginning we had forged. My phone buzzed with a message. Martha, how's the new place? I smiled and typed back, it feels like home already. Her reply came quickly. Of course it does. Home isn't a place, it's the people you share it with. She was right. So right. For years, I had clung to what was gone. I'd tried to secure a place in Carlton's life through quiet financial support, all while accepting scraps of emotional connection. But I had learned the hard way. Real bonds aren't built on money. Real family doesn't thrive on secrets and unspoken sacrifices. It takes honesty, openness, the bravery to speak and to listen. The journey here had been steep and filled with heartache. There were nights I didn't know if I'd make it through. But in the end, something stronger had taken root. A relationship with my son built not on guilt or obligation, but on true understanding and respect. And beyond that, I had rediscovered myself, not as someone's mother or widow, but as a whole person. A woman with her own strength, her own voice, her own future. The house Harlo had coveted was gone. Her grip on our lives, broken. The secrets she had exploited had come into the light, and with that light, healing began. I looked at the stars again, and peace, deep, quiet, and real, settled over me. The fortune I had hidden for so long was no longer locked away in silence. It was being used now to build something far more precious than property or status. A family rooted in truth, in love, in shared purpose. Harlo never understood that. To her, value was measured in money and control. But the real wealth? It was in trust, in forgiveness, in connection, in love. And that I now knew was something no one could ever take away from us again.